Hi everyone, today we're going to do some painting with coffee. So I'm going to give you a quick demo. This is a page from a sketchbook done with coffee and some fine liner pens. Nice wash in the background and just different various skulls. So this is the setup, this is the material that we need. So I have my paper, a pencil, some fine liner pens, paintbrushes in a few different sizes, my resource image I'm going to work from. I have my pots here that I'm going to mix up the coffee. So we use instant coffee, so make sure it's the powder form. We're going to create a few different shades. So by putting in half a teaspoon and then maybe a full teaspoon and a quarter of a teaspoon, we get a lighter to darker shades of coffee mixture. So I'm going to add in a few teaspoons of water, 2 into each. It's important to do this slowly and to get it right, and to make sure then when we mix them together that all the coffee is dissolved, so we have a nice watery consistency to work with. I'm going to mix that with the brush. A good mix round just to dissolve all the granules, powder. Make sure it's well mixed in. My water just off camera there to clean my brush. Now in the small pot here I have a very watered down solution. So it has a tiny bit of coffee in it, mostly water. What we're going to do with that is create a wash on the background to start off with. So step 1, we're going to create a wash background. Remove away the fine liners, we won't be using those for a bit. We're just going to cover the page in the wash, so lightly and quickly just cover a whole page with the wash of the coffee. It's okay not for it to be perfect, we want some imperfections in it, so maybe some areas might have less and some areas might have a bit more, or some of the coffee might gather in some areas, and it creates quite an interesting watermark and kind of effect in the background. So we're just making sure we get all areas of the paper covered. To speed up the drying then we could use a hair dryer in between coats and just to dry off the wash. If you make any mistakes or spill any on it, or you think you've got it too dark in one area like this here now, I'm going to take a tissue and dab it off, and then just carry on over, spreading out the coffee. You can see how it works around the paper. Don't need to spend too long doing this part. And that's it done. Now, so I have drawn my skull on with pencil for my resource image, so we're ready to start painting. Doesn't need to be too detailed, just a nice outline where you can work in the lighter and darker shading. So I've got my 3 different shades of coffee made up from the different strengths. And I also have my wash there as well, just in case I want to add some lighter areas. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the skull, mostly with the lighter shade. We're just going to get a nice background base on. By adding in some parts with some white or some water, it'll make it kind of lighter and give it kind of a washed effect. So we can work the coffee around, you can spread it. Can work into it with the darker shades now, adding those in. dabbing off areas, drying as we go. So add a layer and dry, add a layer and dry. If you don't have a hair dryer, just leave it to dry. It'll dry quite quickly. Getting in details with all the darker shades and all the areas of shade, areas of the skull that may have holes in them, and then from your resource image it looks dark. So once you're happy with your skull, with the coffee elements, you can start adding some detail. So I have fine liners and I have a biro. Both work equally well. I'm going to use the fine liners today. I'm going to move the coffee out of the way. Make sure it's good and dry before you start with this. Pens won't work on the coffee unless it's dry. You'll just rip your paper. So we're just going to start going around the outline with the fine liner pen. Biro is absolutely fine for this as well, if that's what you have at home. Just getting all the details in. Picking up highlights. You can see there in the eye sockets, I've gone quite dark and I've used a bit of cross hatching just to emphasize that that's a dark area and that's where we want to pick up some details. So below now the cracks, things like that, we're going to add some little lines, tiny details. They all add to it. They all highlight the areas. And there we have it. I've sped that up. It probably took me about 40 minutes to do. Now going back to the sketchbook here, I'm just going to show you a few examples. So the skull, this one here is actually outlined in biro, so you wouldn't actually notice the difference. You can see here that I added a little bit of water after I used the fine liner, which gave that kind of grayed effect. The skull up in the top corner is done with fine liner. And you can see the cow, I used quite a lot of detail with the fine liner. So there we have it, coffee and fine liner skull. Looking forward to seeing your results. Thanks guys.